Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something called risk terrain modeling. It's a pretty cool way to understand crime, kind of like a weather forecast.
Mm.
But instead of predicting rain, it predicts crime.
Oh, that's a great analogy. Yeah, it's all about really understanding the factors that make certain places more susceptible to crime. And just like a meteorologist analyzes things like temperature and wind patterns, we look at the environmental and social aspects of a place to kind of figure out how risky it is.
Okay, so no crystal ball,
Yeah.
but some serious science here. And this deep dive is all about understanding this risk, how RTM was developed, and why it seems to be so effective. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Perfect. So the article starts by talking about crime hotspots, those areas where crime seems to be concentrated. It makes you wonder, why do some places just seem to attract more trouble than others?
Right. That is the question, right? The idea behind RTM is that crime opportunity isn't evenly distributed. Some places just have more of the features, more of the things in the environment that create opportunities for crime.
So it's not just random. There's a method to the madness, huh?
Exactly. And it's not about blaming specific people or neighborhoods either. It's about understanding how the environment itself can shape those opportunities.
So how does RTM actually help us understand those opportunities?
Well, it starts by shifting our focus. For a long time, the focus has been on predicting who might commit a crime. We do these risk assessments of people. RTM changes that. It takes the concept of risk assessment and applies it to places. So instead of who, we're looking at where.
That's a fascinating shift in perspective. So how do you actually go about building this so-called risk terrain?
Well, it all comes down to identifying the specific factors that contribute to a certain type of crime. For example, the study was all about predicting shootings. So they focused on things that, through research, experience, or even local knowledge, were understood to be linked to shootings.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of factors are we talking about here?
Yeah. In this case, they zeroed in on three main things: where known gang members lived, the locations of certain types of businesses, and places with a lot of drug arrests.
So you're looking at gang activity, places that might attract crowds or certain behaviors, and even police activity. That sounds like a pretty diverse mix.
It is, and that's what's so cool about RTM. It acknowledges that crime is complex and is influenced by a lot of different things. Each of those factors gets mapped out, creating a layer of risk, and then it's like stacking those layers on top of each other to create a composite map.
Okay, so like a layer cake of rank, with each layer representing a different factor. I'm starting to see how this all comes together.
It's a very visual way to think about it. And the areas where those layers overlap, where the risk ingredients, so to speak, are most concentrated, those become the high-risk zones.
So instead of just relying on where shootings happened before, which the article calls retrospective mapping, RTM is more like a proactive way to see where they might happen in the future.
You got it. And this is really where RTM ties into some fundamental ideas in criminology. You see, for decades, researchers have theorized that opportunities to commit crime are a major driver of crime rates, but they struggle to actually measure opportunity in a really concrete way. RTM actually uses risk as a metric for opportunity.
So RTM takes this abstract idea of opportunity and makes it something measurable, mappable. That's pretty ingenious.
And there's more to it than just looking at risk in a general sense. The study gets even more granular.
Tell me more.
So they actually broke down the map into these smaller cells, and they assigned a risk value to each one based on those three factors we talked about, the gang residences, the business types, and the drug arrests.
So the higher the risk value of a cell, the more likely a shooting is to happen there.
Exactly. And what they found was that those areas with higher risk values did, in fact, experience more shootings. Each increase in that risk value was linked to a pretty significant increase in the odds of a shooting happening.
Okay, but we kind of already knew that crime tends to cluster in certain areas, right? How is this different than just looking at past crime data and saying, oh, well, crime happened there before, so it's likely to happen there again?
That's where things get really interesting. The study actually directly compared the predictive power of RTM to that traditional hotspot mapping approach, the one that just relies on historical data. And what they found was pretty remarkable.
On all years, what did they find?
The RTM approach was significantly more accurate at predicting where those future shootings would occur. In fact, it identified twice as many shooting locations as the traditional method.
Wow, twice as many. That's a huge difference. It really highlights how RTM provides a much deeper understanding of what's actually driving crime.
Exactly. It's not just about knowing where crime happened before. It's about understanding the underlying conditions that make those areas more susceptible to crime in the first place.
Okay, I'm definitely seeing the value of this approach. But how does this actually translate into real-world action? How can police departments or community leaders actually use this information to make a difference?
Well, the study really emphasizes how RTM can be a game changer when it comes to things like resource allocation and strategic decision making. Imagine a police department trying to figure out where to concentrate their patrols. Instead of just relying on past crime data, which, might be outdated, they can use these RTM maps to get a much clearer picture of where the highest risk zones are right now.
So it's about being more proactive and targeted with their resources, rather than just reacting to crime after it's already happened.
Precisely, and it's not just about police deployment either. Imagine a community organization that wants to implement programs to prevent youth violence. RTM could help them pinpoint those areas where those programs would have the biggest impact.
It seems like this approach could really help communities focus their efforts on addressing the root causes of crime. It's not just about reacting, it's about understanding those underlying conditions and working to actually change them.
And that's really where I think the real power of RTM lies. It shifts our perspective from simply playing whack-a-mole with crime to actually understanding the landscape of risk and making more informed decisions about how to create lasting change.
This whole concept has really got me thinking about the bigger picture. We often talk about crime as if it's this random force, but RTM suggests that it's actually something we can understand and potentially influence.
It's like you said at the beginning, it's like a weather forecast for crime. We can't control the weather, but we can prepare for it. And in the same way, we can't eliminate crime entirely, but we can understand the conditions that contribute to it and make smarter decisions to reduce the risk.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. And this study specifically focused on shootings, but I'm curious about the broader applications of RTM. Do you think it would be effective for other types of crime, like property crime, for example?
That's a great question, and it's one that researchers are actively exploring.
Hmm.
The effectiveness of RTM likely depends on the specific type of crime you're looking at and the availability of good data. For example, property crime might be influenced by very different factors than violent crime.
That makes sense, and obviously the quality of the data itself is crucial. I could already imagine how this approach could be used in so many different ways, not just in the criminal justice system. What about using RTM to understand things like traffic accidents or even public health crises?
The possibilities are really exciting, and researchers are already starting to explore those applications.
I'm already picturing these maps, showing areas at high risk for traffic accidents that could help cities prioritize road safety improvements, or maps that highlight areas with a higher risk of certain health issues, which would allow healthcare providers to better target their resources and interventions. This is truly groundbreaking stuff.
It really is. And, it all stems from understanding the power of spatial analysis and how different factors can interact to create an environment of risk.
This is really blowing my mind. It's like a whole new way of looking at crime.
It is a powerful tool, and honestly, we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of its potential.
Well, this deep dive has been incredible. I can't wait to see how RTM continues to evolve and what other amazing applications emerge in the future.
Me too. It's a really exciting field. I think we're going to see some amazing developments in the years to come.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey. And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective on crime and shown you the power of these data-driven solutions.
Remember, there's often a lot more going on beneath the surface when it comes to understanding crime. By embracing new approaches like RTM, we can work towards creating safer, more resilient communities for everyone.
Until next time, stay curious.
And we'll see you on the next deep dive.